Hello, everyone. Welcome to Busting Through Imposter Syndrome. I'm so excited to talk about this topic today. I'm Dr. Shelley Nash, and I am a coach, a women's empowerment coach. I really help women to develop self-mastery so that they can boost their self-confidence, self-belief, and claim the success that they deserve. So if that sounds like you're in the right place. If you have been having the thoughts of imposter syndrome, wondering what's going on, wondering if you have it, you're in the right place as well. So I want to just declare that I am a holistic chiropractor is my background. So I have been a coach for 4 years. So my talk on busting through imposter syndrome today is based on what I know and from my health career as well as from my mindset coaching career. So if you're here, please make a comment so I can see who's here. If you click on the StreamYard button, it'll let me know your name and be able to see your face, and we can have a conversation and interact on the call. So I wanted to start off right away so that there's no gap in the recording, and everyone that comes on later or watches the replay, they can watch that in the units tab of Living Powerfully with Dr. Shelley. So, imposter syndrome. I actually have to say that I heard this phrase actually fairly recently, and maybe I'd heard it before, but I hadn't paid attention to it. And then I was like, "What are people talking about imposter syndrome?" And so I looked into it a little bit more at that time, and I really looked into it a lot in the last few days because a mentor of mine had mentioned it. And so now let me know who you are too, because if you don't click the StreamYard button, I don't see who you are, but thanks for watching. I've done some recent research, but I just wanted to say, I don't know everything there is to know about imposter syndrome, but I have some really good ideas about it based on my coaching methods. And so that's what I wanted to share with you today. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat as we're going along, and we can have an interaction. So here's a dictionary definition of imposter syndrome. People who struggle with imposter syndrome believe that they are undeserving of their achievements and the high esteem in which they are, in fact, generally held. They feel that they aren't as competent or intelligent as others might think, and that soon enough, people will discover the truth about them. So what I like to say, there's something that I actually heard Oprah say. She used to say, I always used to think, who do I think I am, to do this or to be doing this? She used to have that kind of statement going on in her head. Who do I think I am, to do this? And so when I heard her say that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is maybe more common than we thought of. So as a holistic chiropractor, previously for over 25 years, I had a lot of experience with health. And I feel like when we label something as a dis-ease, disharmony, we always hyphen the word dis-ease because it's really a bunch of symptoms. As chiropractors, I was always looking for the source of the problem, not treating the symptoms. So I feel like when you label something like imposter syndrome or fibromyalgia or any other dis-ease process, that you are in danger, really, of letting yourself be that label, become that label. And what happens is that it will lock you into creating more of the same. So let's just repeat that. When you label something, so like saying when you say I'm an imposter or I feel like an imposter, you're really cementing that inside of you. And we know that anytime you use the words "I am," that statement really impresses that into you. So I'm an imposter, labeling yourself that is really creating more of the same in you. And when you say, I have imposter syndrome, it labels you and puts you into this group. And we sort of like this. I mean, you hear some people saying like, I love the fact that I got the diagnosis. I couldn't figure out what was going on and I got a diagnosis. It makes you feel better to, quote, have something and be diagnosed with something, and you don't feel so alone. You feel like they can help me now because I have something and I've been diagnosed. It's imposter syndrome. Phew. It wasn't me, it's imposter syndrome. And that just perpetuates the problem, really. So anyone relate to this? Thanks for being on. Thanks for saying hi. It's really always what we want to focus on is looking to the source. And say, for example, I used to always, when fibromyalgia became a thing, I was like, it's just a bunch of symptoms. It's just like a series of symptoms that a lot of people have. But looking at the symptoms isn't getting to the source of the problem. And looking at, and be able to label yourself as having something, does kind of at first make you feel better. But I just really want to warn you that if you're doing that, stop doing that, because it's just recreating that problem. You're recreating the imposter syndrome feeling inside of yourself every time you say, I have this, I am that. So really be careful about that. So this imposter phenomenon, as far as I could in my research that I did quickly, came out about in 1978, which was actually a paper that some women did about imposter phenomenon in high achieving women. I thought that very interesting. There is a tendency for women to have these thought processes, I guess, more than men. And we'll look into that later as well. So, and this is the definition they gave of imposter phenomena. So a persistent belief, I want you to listen carefully to these words, a persistent belief in their lack of intelligence, skills, and competence, that the praise from others was undeserved, and that they continue to doubt their ability. And this they found in high level achieving women. High level achieving women. So let's go into a different thought process around this, because being a mindset coach and helping you shift your reality is what I do. So I'm always looking at things from the source, which I believe is our thinking process, and the results of that. So we all basically can have these thoughts. I don't even want to say imposter syndrome, but I'll say it right now. We all can have imposter syndrome. And so it happens really anytime that you stretch yourself out of your comfort zone. Have you been trying to stretch yourself out of your comfort zone in the new year? I was just looking at the comment. Yeah, surprised it goes back so far. It probably goes back farther than that. We just didn't have a label for it before that. So just pay attention and you'll start to see the patterns here. So did you set yourself a goal for the new year, and have you felt sort of uncomfortable around the goal? Was it outside of your comfort zone? So anytime you set a goal that's farther along from where you are right now, it will cause anxiety, chaos, a shift of vibration inside of you. It will feel uncomfortable. And when you set a big goal, I talk about like you have two aspects of yourself. You have like your inner self, your old self, an old image of yourself, your current image of yourself, and then you have this place you want to go. So as soon as you set this goal and start the path going towards it, your old self, your old image of yourself, your current image of yourself even starts to get really uncomfortable. And if it could talk, it would be saying things like, who do you think you are? You're crazy. You can't do that. It just gets all riled up inside of you. And that's some of the chaos that you feel, is this inner conversation that's going on with your current and former self of like, you can't get to that goal. That's scary. We don't want to do that. Stay here. So you are conditioned to act, to talk, to walk, to behave in a certain way. And so anytime you try to change that conditioning, there is sort of a chaotic vibration that happens, even an anxiety, feeling nauseous, feeling sick. So when you set this goal outside of from where you are right now, you're not in alignment with that goal. You're not congruent with that goal. And so you have to think of, who is the person that has that goal? What will I be like when I have that goal? What will I be doing? How will I be acting when I have that goal? And you have to move yourself along the path of getting into your new self as you set a goal like that. So your current image is a result of your older image that you have for yourself. And unless you change the image you hold of yourself, it's going to hold you back. It doesn't want to change. It's going to keep you right where you're at. So you can make incremental progress. Have you ever backslid? That's why, because you're not congruent. Your insides aren't congruent with your outsides. Your thought process about yourself, how you feel about yourself, what you believe about yourself. So what's going on here? What's really going on? So we're going to take some deep dive. So hang in there with me. If you're resonating, put that in the chat. If you love this, put that in the chat. Put love or hearts. I appreciate it. So what's really going on? I love this quote. When I heard this, I was like, this is so awesome. It's not who you are that holds you back. It's who you think you're not. I'll say that again because it's so great. It's not who you are that holds you back. It's who you think you're not. So who you are is perfect. You are perfection. You're born perfection. And there's nothing wrong with you. And what happens is our thought process gets in the way about who we believe ourselves to be and how that's been impressed over time. So I know we love that quote. And yet we have to take a deeper dive and say, what does that really mean? It's not who I am that holds me back. It's who I think I'm not. Well, who do I think I'm not? And what does my thinking have to do with it? So, if you're not familiar with the term paradigm, basically it's a paradigm is something you have, which is a group of things that exist in your unconscious, subconscious mind. It's a multitude of habits, beliefs, patterns, conditioning, self-belief, self-esteem, all those things. It's our programming. And we call it a paradigm. So the first time I heard that word, I was like, what? I don't get it. Every time he says that word, I get confused. So if you get confused by paradigm, think of your programming, like your computer programming. Your computer's programmed and it needs regular updates to keep working. Your phone is programmed. It needs regular updates to keep working. So how often do you update your programming? Do you even know what your programming is? Do you even know how you were conditioned and programmed? So we have paradigm, which consists of habit, belief, our image of ourselves, and our programming. And then this is key around, I think, this imposter syndrome is that not only do we have a paradigm, a certain set of programming and beliefs, our culture has a programming. Our culture has a certain way of being. And we know this through a lot of things that have happened recently. We know this beliefs about women. We know this through beliefs about money. We know this through beliefs about your race. We know this about, there's so many cultural beliefs that have been accepted by the majority or accepted for years and years and years. And does culture change? Does culture shift? Yes, but it is kind of stuck in its ways too. We've seen how Black Lives Matter, we've seen protests for that years and years ago, and then we go back to the same way. And things get riled up and we get more, protests, more people involved, and then things end up going back to the same way. And so unless we change cultural paradigms and personal paradigms, that problem is probably going to still go on. And it will get better and better and better, yes, but we have to change the cultural paradigm. We have to change our personal paradigm. So think about that with imposter syndrome as we're going along, and I'll try to point it out as we go. So let's see. When does this whole thing start with your paradigm? It starts very early on. So the thing is, when you come into this world as a baby, you are like a sponge. You take everything around you. That's how you learn. You learn from your family, you learn from your environment, you learn from your aunts and your uncles and your teachers. And so up to about age 6 years old, you are like a sponge. Everything around you, you take in as truth. It's truth. And you begin to act like your parents, you begin to talk like your parents and walk like your parents. And it's not all about your parents, it's your environment, it's your genetics. And that's why you end up being like them, is because you've taken on their beliefs, you've taken on their habits, you've taken on their thoughts. And the thing is, it happened to them too. They took on their beliefs, thoughts, and habits from their parents, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They not only took on cultural beliefs, they took on personal beliefs, they took on personal habits, cultural habits. They took it all on, just like you did when you were little. And so it wasn't your fault. That's just the way it is. That's how your mind and brain develop. And so, but we, most of our lives, go through our life not understanding where it came from or how it happened. And so you're here today to learn about this. So it happens, so that you take these things on that are true, you take them on as true. And they might not have even been true for your parents, but you take it on as true because you can't reject it at that time. You have no ability to reject ideas early on. So you just take everything on as true, and you accept it into your reality. So then you go along for your early life, and you have a little bit more ability to reject things as you get older and older and older. And by the time you're 18 years old, this is really crazy. You are 96 to 98% programmed like you're going to be for the rest of your life. That's a scary thought, isn't it? So you've been programmed by the time you're 18, and unless you learn some of these tips and tools and tricks of how to change your programming, you're going to go on and live from those programs, those habits, those beliefs, that image of yourself for the rest of your life. And that's why you get out of the vicious cycle. That's why you try to change, and then you go back, and you try to change and you go back. So this is just not your fault, but it's part of how it is. And so most people don't have this understanding of what's happening. And this is what you need to do to start to change things. Now, this is a great statement too. I love this because at this time of year, a lot of people are trying to change behavior, trying to lose weight, trying to exercise more. And they focus on the behavior. They focus on eating better. They focus on exercising at a regular time, which is great, which is great. However, back to what we talked about with holistic health and healing and chiropractic is that you have to go to the source of the problem. So if you want to lose weight, what's the source of the problem? It's not what you're eating. You probably already know how to lose weight. You probably know how to eat. You've probably done it before. So that is not the problem. The problem is, what were you thinking in order to create those behaviors and actions? And what were you feeling? And what's the image you hold of yourself? Do you still hold yourself as a fat person or as an overweight person or a person that struggles with weight? So until you change the way you're programmed, you're never going to get permanent results. When you try to change behavior, you get a temporary result. To get a permanent result, you have to go back to the source, which is how you think and how you feel when you take certain actions. All right. That making sense, you guys? So if you are doing something new and you're changing a behavior, you have to start looking at what's the source of that behavior. And that actually requires, I think, it requires help. Like, we don't change our programming on our own. Like, do you change your computer programming on your own? You don't know how to do that. You just click the button. Somebody else does it, So you need help to change your programming. Qualified help, people that know how to help you through that. And that's what I do. So, but more back into the imposter syndrome. So I'm not sure where this fits in my talk, but I thought I'm going to mention this because I know this used to trip me up a lot as well, which is there is a difference between shame and guilt. And I think in the thought process around imposter syndrome, one can tend to have shame around the fact that they feel that they're not feeling like they deserve what people are saying or deserve the job or whatever. So back to that statement, it's not who you are that holds you back, it's who you think you're not. Well, guilt has to do with something that you did wrong. You think you did something wrong, whereas shame has to do with you feel like you are wrong, that you're the problem. You're innately, something's wrong with you. It's not, with this imposter syndrome, it's just that you have believed things about yourself that aren't true. You've been programmed by culture to believe certain things that aren't true. Women have been programmed for years and years and years to believe that, they can't, be president. They can't, now we know we can't have a vice president woman. Women have been breaking glass ceilings for themselves because they've been in a cultural area where it hasn't been possible. But still, even though they're breaking the glass ceilings, when they do, they're having the thoughts of, I'm not good enough. I didn't really deserve it. They're talking their way out of it in the private of their own home. So that's can have a tendency to feel a little shame around that. But shame, remember, is that something's wrong with you, and there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's another phrase that I've said to myself in the past, which is like, there must be something wrong with me because I just can't get this, but there's nothing wrong with you. You just don't have the right information yet. So here's another, any questions that anyone has? I have some notes today because this was such a big topic. I wanted to give it justice to what I know, as well as take you down a path. So another thing that happens for us, how many of you have had a lot of education? Keep going and getting more educated and more knowledge to maybe bolster yourself up, feel better about where you're at. And that could be a part of imposter syndrome, so to speak, is that continually needing to prove yourself by getting more and more education in order to think that the education is going to help you get what you want. And so I'm guilty of that. I have many degrees, many certifications, and I just kept going for more and more and more. But the tendency to what happens to that is we gain knowledge, but we're still not doing what we know how to do. So we have this thing called the knowing doing gap. It's like we know what to do, and yet we're still not doing it. And so more knowledge is not always the answer. And that's why you see like a lot of people that are super successful that didn't even go to college, didn't even go to high school, because they were more about the doing and more about the action and doing, what they needed to do to get where they wanted to go. They realized that they didn't necessarily need the knowledge. So there's a statement also of like, let's see, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I relate that more to personal development. It's like I didn't understand exactly how my mind works. So it held me back for years. Like it's more of an understanding. Like the more you understand about how you think and how you feel and how that affects your life, the more self-knowledge you have. And so between the knowing and the doing, what stops you? And so in that gap is that programming, that conditioning, the paradigm of habits, beliefs, your image of self is what holds you back. So this is a whole aspect that we study a lot about through my coaching systems and really try to bridge the gap, eliminate that gap so that you're taking actions on where you want to go without being held back, without being stopped by those things. So I thought this was interesting. I picked this up from something I was listening to this morning about imposter syndrome. And it was saying that we develop coping mechanisms because of these feelings that we have about who we are and what we're capable of. And see if you relate to these. I'll number them off and then put the numbers that you relate to in the chat. So number one, a coping mechanism that we use is that if we are diligent and we just work harder, then it'll be better. So diligence and hard work is a coping mechanism for how we feel about ourselves. And we might hold back. We might stop ourselves. We might not go for the extra job. We might not go for the promotion. We might, sort of settle. That's what I call it, settling for a life we don't really want because we're uncomfortable going forward. We might use charm and to get, to feel better about ourselves, to feel better in a situation, put on your charms and, have you ever felt like this? Like when you go to a social event and, you have to kind of like feel, make yourself feel like good and happy. And then you come back and then you feel like that wasn't even you that was at the party, that was somebody else. So that's what I would call charm. Like you can put it on to get yourself through a situation. This next one, number 4, is big, 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 big. It's procrastination. Who here has an issue or a problem with procrastination? So procrastination keeps you from moving forward. So it keeps you from going outside of your comfort zone. It keeps you from going for the goals. It keeps you, stuck in one spot. So procrastination has to do with indecision. and not, and not making decisions. So it's the one thing that is like the worst thing you can do that holds you back. So if you're a procrastinator, not getting things done, the solution to that is make decisions. Make decisions quickly and often. And what helps you make decisions, this used to be super hard for me. It was hard for me to make decisions on my own. I would always be asking people what they thought. And what helps around decision is a couple things. First of all, when you know who you are, when you know what you want, and you know where you're going, any decision you have to make, you just align it with those three things: who you are, what you want, and where you're going. And if it doesn't align, then the answer is no. If it aligns, the answer is yes. Now, will your programming get in the way and try to talk you out of the yes? Yes. Because it doesn't want you to change. Your inner programming doesn't want you to go somewhere else. It wants to stay the same. So you have to then start trusting with your intuition the yes and the no. And when you get the yes, you have to trust that you can leap out on faith and everything's going to be okay, even though you don't know how it's going to be okay. So that's one thing about procrastination. Making decisions is the solution. And another way you can do this is make decisions often. Practice making decisions daily. Like the small things in your life. Like, I'm deciding to have lunch right now. I'm deciding to take a break. I'm deciding this, that, these small things. And it's like a muscle, this decision muscle, and your intuition, following your intuition, is also a muscle. And so if you hanging out in holding back and procrastination, you're not exercising your muscles of decision and moving forward. And so what happens when we don't exercise? We get weaker, and it's harder for us to do things. And so we can apply that to the same thing. Okay, moving on. Number 5, you maintain a low or changing profile. So you kind of like are, the wallflower, that's what it's called. You remain a wallflower. You don't go for attention. You don't want attention. You just hold back again. And here's another one, sort of like procrastination. You never finish things. You start projects and you don't finish them, because the finishing of it, is like you don't then need to acknowledge it or celebrate it or, say that you were capable and you did a good job, because you never finished it. And when you never finish, you can continue to feel bad about yourself because you didn't finish. So that can build up and create a really strong feeling of not feeling good about yourself when you don't finish things, don't finish the projects. And this one kind of encompasses almost all of it, which is self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is kind of like the knowing doing gap in a way. And what I've talked about previously of, we're trying to do something, we know how to do something, and we start going for it, but then there's a part of ourselves that pulls us back. And that is the paradigm, you guessed it, the habits, beliefs, the self-image, the programming that's inside of us. So self-sabotage happens because you're not congruent with what you want to do, inside and outside. And so in order to get congruent and in aligned with where you're going and what you want to do, you have to work on what's inside. And I know that's a very popular statement right now, working from the inside out, but a lot of people don't really get what that means. And that's what I just described is more what that means. So what is the way out of this imposter syndrome? about to wrap up here. What is the way out of imposter syndrome? So, first of all, you have to understand what's going on. A lot of the stuff that I just described, you have to understand it at a deep level. And then with that understanding, you're able to take control of yourself from the inside out. I'll use that phrase. So from that understanding, you're able to take control of yourself and your life, not be so affected by the outside world. You're able to take in what you want and reject the rest. You're able to build up a strong self-belief and self-confidence. And another aspect is developing this bulletproof self-image and self-belief. And how do we do that? Well, that takes a bit of coaching. That takes a bit of process. That's what I love to teach my clients. That's what I love to work on with my clients. So it's a process and it can be done. You can shift your beliefs about yourself, your self-image, into a better place, into the place you want to go. And this all comes from the fact that this was discovered back in the 1960s, that our image of ourselves, first of all, was implanted at that early age. And we took on an image of ourselves from our environment and our family and genetics and people around us. And we reinforced that image over time, and we became that. And by the time we were 18, most of it was formed already. So then we continue to live out of that self-image that we created. Now, you also have an image, an outer image of yourself, like what you see in the mirror. And so oftentimes we'll use a weight loss example again, like you're going to lose weight. You lose weight and you become thinner, you become fitter, but you haven't changed the image inside of yourself from your early life, from your growing up life. And you haven't changed not only the image, but how you speak to yourself, how you talk to yourself, the thoughts you have about yourself. So if you only change the outer image, it will be temporary. Just like what I said, if you only change the behavior, it'll be temporary. You have to go to the source. You have to, almost like a rotor-rooter, get rid of the old beliefs about yourself, the old self-image, and create a new one. We call that sometimes rewiring your mind, rewiring your mindset, rewiring your self-image, creating a new image of who you are and where you're going. And I just said it, but the last step to really the way out of imposter syndrome is how you talk to yourself and learning to talk to yourself differently. And we all talk to ourselves. We all have it, whether we think we do or we don't. We all talk to ourselves. So if you just said, I don't talk to myself, then that was talking to yourself. So we all talk to ourselves, and we need to learn to talk to ourselves differently, in a positive way, in an inspiring way, in an uplifting way, no self-criticism, no defeatist talking, and really in the way that is going to get you to the place you want to go. So there's something called fake it till you make it. And that's what you want to do, because the way that you change yourself is through repetition. And it's like almost illogical repetition. You have to repeat the same thing over and over and over again before it becomes a permanent way of your being. So that's one of the things I also help my clients with, is how do you repetitiously create this new self so that it starts becoming you, so that you start walking into that. So you can easily step into your goals, or more easily step into your goals, get there faster, have a quantum leap. Because the only reason quantum leaps aren't happening is because you're not in alignment with where you're going. And when you get in alignment with where you're going, inside out, I use that again, but not only inside out, but above down. And by above down, I mean when your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions and behavior are all in alignment, there isn't anything out of place, then you are in a certain vibration, you will attract the like vibration to you instantly. It happens in the positive and it happens in the negative. So you are an attractive being, whether you believe it or not. It is happening. It's been happening since the moment the time began. You are an attractive being, and you can attract negative, you can attract positive. It's your choice. So the way out of imposter syndrome, again, quickly, and into self-mastery is understanding what's going on inside of yourself, taking control of yourself, developing a bulletproof self-image and a bulletproof belief, learning to talk to yourself differently, and really lifting yourself up, bringing yourself into this new self that's going to go for the goals. So wrapping it around to imposter syndrome again. So just let's relook at, now that we've learned these things, look at that definition again. The first definition I said, people who struggle with imposter syndrome believe that they are undeserving. So why do they believe they're undeserving? Because they've been programmed that way, because they learned that from a very early age. And what else does it say? They feel like they're not competent or as intelligent like others might think they are. So these are thoughts and feelings that they've been programmed to believe about themselves. And then the second definition. So the imposter phenomenon is a persistent belief. What did I just say? The way to change yourself is repetition and persistence and determination of a new belief. So the way to change imposter syndrome is to be persistent and repetitious about creating a new belief about yourself, that you are intelligent, that you possess the skills, that you are competent, that you are deserving, that you are capable. And that also praise from others is undeserved. You are deserving. You have to imprint this new belief about yourself so solidly that you don't think the other thoughts anymore. And you don't have the doubt in your ability, because as you create new beliefs about yourself, the doubt won't happen anymore. And when it does, you're going to stop it right away. As soon as you feel doubt, you have to stop it. You have to change it into what is the truth. Ask yourself, what is the truth about who I am and what I'm capable of? So think about imposter syndrome differently. Do not label yourself in that category. Look at the symptoms. Look at the statements. Ask yourself if it's true. And if it's not true, create a new statement for yourself, a new belief for yourself. So I want to let you guys know that I have developed a program for women that I coach women through, and it's called Self-Mastery to Riches. And it's really about all of this. It's about boosting your self-confidence and your self-belief. It's really about getting you in the place so that you can claim all the success you deserve in all areas of your life, whether it's relationship, whether it's your work, whether it's financial. So Self Mastery to Riches is my coaching program for women. If this interests you, if you love what you've heard on this talk about imposter syndrome today, then let's get on a call and see if it might be a good fit for you. So I thank you so much for being on the call today. It was great to have you here. If you're watching in the replay, let me know replay. If you're watching the replay, interact on the call just as if you were on it, because when you interact, you actually get more out of a call because the writing causes you to think and that causes you to act in a different way. So thank you so much for being on the call today, and I will see you next Saturday for Saturday Live. Another topic, never know what it's going to be. I just use my inspiration from the week. And if you have ideas you want me to talk about, feel free to DM me, let me know. Thank you so much for being on. I'm glad you got lots of value from today's call, and have a great weekend. See you later. Bye-bye.